Have we hit the afternoon slump yet? Well, if you haven't already, observing the two ladies backstage do the Amy Cuddy power pose, I would highly recommend it. And I think the next half an hour is probably going to be a bit of crack.
You just outed us, Ian.
That was supposed to be a secret.
Oh,
That's okay.
Chatham House rules amongst the 1,800 people in the room, if that's all right. So we've got two extremely distinguished panelists here, and one is a native of Ireland and the other is not. So I'm going to go to Anne first, and I'm just going to ask her, it's her very first time in Ireland, right?
It is.
And the Irish consciousness is a little bit suffering from imposter syndrome, so we always want to know what people think of us. So I'm going to ask you, your first impression of Ireland since you've been here. How is it for you?
Well, first of all, I am honored to be here. And on my first trip to Ireland, I have to tell you that I enjoyed my first ever Guinness at the Lord Mayor of Dublin's house. So I don't know that I could have had a better first impression of Ireland, and have found nothing but warmth and authenticity in every single person I've had the opportunity to talk with.
And you've done a fantastic job in appealing to the audience by coming in the green today.
Know your audience.
Definitely not lost. Alison, I know you've just flown in and you're about to fly out, and the interesting question I have for you as a native, but somebody that has now been taken all over the world in pursuit of your entrepreneurship and all of the things that you've got an ambition to do, what's it like when you do touch down at home for the times that you are at home?
Oh, it's great. It's home, right? But actually, I would argue as soon as you get on the flight, as soon as you get on an Aer Lingus flight, it feels like home, no matter where you are in the world.
It's a good job we don't have Eddie Wilson here like last year from Ryanair.
That is true.
So, given that I'm a little bit ahead of the game here in that I've had the opportunity to talk to you in advance, I'm just going to ask you just to give a little pen sketch of yourselves, because I think there's a unique opportunity here. We're here to talk about leadership, and we've got a little bit of a David and Goliath. So what we've got Anne from NASA, which is probably the most recognized or one of the most recognized brands in the world. And we've got Alison from Woebot, who is aspiring to be and is on her way in the ascendant. So we're going to talk about leadership. Both of you are at the very, very cutting edge in different ways of AI and technology. And we're going to talk about where the nexus of those two things both come together in the context of leadership and what it means. So the mission for the next 21 minutes, which is what we've got left, is to try to help create a pen sketch of what the best of these two minds can do or bring to the table about what leadership is and what leadership isn't. And in order to do that, just give us a sense very briefly. I'm going to start with you again, Anne. Everybody knows NASA, the brand, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember sitting on this stage last year with two of your colleagues from NASA, and the thing that struck me the most was the breadth and the range of what NASA does that is more than just Apollo 13. So do you want to just describe exactly what NASA is and give us a pen sketch of NASA, the things that people mightn't know that you do?
Sure. NASA has a very large mission set, from pioneering revolutionary techniques in aviation to robotic exploration, Earth observation. How many of you have seen the amazing images coming from the James Webb Space Telescope? Incredible. And obviously to human spaceflight. Just on Sunday, we launched Crew 8 to the International Space Station. The International Space Station has been continuously operated by humans in space for over 20 years. And so, again, it's got a little bit of everything.
And you employ how many thousand people?
We have 18,000 government workers and about an additional 30 to 40,000 contractor workforce.
And your role as the deputy for human capital, what does that involve?
It involves providing the full spectrum of human capital services, from recruitment and hiring all the way through career progression, learning and development, performance management, all the way till the end when they opt to retire.
And where does leadership fit in that suite of services?
At NASA, we have tried to make sure that it fits in at every step of an employee's journey along the way. We have specifically tried to tailor various learning opportunities to build a leadership culture within our employees, even from the first day they step foot into the office. And so whether it's mentoring or on-the-job training, actual learning and development activities, training, leadership is at the forefront, I think, of what we're trying to instill in all of our employees.
Okay. So we're going to come back to leadership in a second and kind of dig into it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Alison, tell us a little bit about Woebot Health, because it's fascinating the journey you've been on. You just started and founded it in 2017, so it's it's in its infancy, still in diapers compared to where NASA is. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is, what you do?
Sure. I founded a company called Woebot Health in 2017. As you said, it's a digital therapeutics company. So we use AI to deliver cognitive behavioral therapy through a quirky sort of robot character called Woebot. Get it? You tell it your woes. Turns out only native English speakers really get that. So a lot of Germans are like, why? Woebot? The journey, I guess, has been sort of a little bit convoluted, although it all seems to make sense when you look back. But I did my PhD here in Dublin and in UCD, and then went over to do a postdoc at Stanford School of Medicine in the psychiatry department. So their model is a little bit different over there. And that was in 2008, and it ended in 2010, which of course was not a good time in Ireland. So if you're in healthcare or in academia, there was virtually no path back. So everybody sort of said, try and stay where you are. You're in a good place there. So I did another postdoc, and then ultimately transitioned to faculty at Stanford, where I was just researching, building therapies, sort of deconstructing them and trying to rebuild them in ways that people could really use. And then the latter part of my academic career there looked really different to the early part. I started to realize that maybe the innovation that we needed in mental health care to reduce the burden of suffering in the population was going to have to be something outside of the lab and outside of the clinic, because we don't have enough clinicians, and we didn't back then. We certainly don't now. And so I started to think, well, maybe there's something in this, and then there was a lot of emerging technology at the time that kind of opened up doors. So big data was, people were very excited about, obviously mobile phones, with actual internet. The iPhones happened in 2008. So things were starting to converge, but nothing was really kind of getting there. The other interventions or apps were sort of underwhelming. They did one thing kind of well, but not really going after the major issue. And so I started kind of looking around campus, and Stanford just happens to be one of those institutions. That supports kind of entrepreneurship and supports truly kind of multidisciplinary collaboration. So I went sort of half-time over in computer science and started looking at the D school there, the design school, and also the Graduate School of Business had a program that helped engineers and scientists take something from lab to market. And so all of those things kind of converged, and then ultimately I founded the company with Andrew Ng, a computer scientist, a kind of well-known figure in AI, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay. And you are writing your future history as we go forward, and you're probably still on a journey, and I'm very interested in, you're going to come at leadership from two different perspectives, because you've got two very different stories, and I think that that's really the beauty of what we have on the stage here. So I've worked for 30 years with leaders to try to help them transform their organizations. And the biggest single difficulty about leadership and dealing with leadership is definition. If every one of us took a Post-it out here and wrote down what leadership is, we'd have 1,800 different definitions of what leadership is. So what I'm interested in is, if you put leadership into Google, as I did just earlier on today, you'll get 6.3 billion results. If you put leadership books into Google, you'll get 3.5 billion results. So what I'm interested in really is, at NASA, when you think about leadership, let's talk about what it means to us, because it might mean something different to us. What does it mean at NASA? And then I'll come to you, Alison, and get your definition of what it means for you.
So I actually appreciate that there are that many definitions for the word leadership. I think leadership, it changes and needs to evolve depending on the circumstances, the organization that you're leading, the individuals that you're leading, et cetera. And so to me, leadership and being a strong leader is adapting. Sometimes you may be leading from the front, sometimes from the middle of the pack, sometimes from the back. And really, to me, that's what it's all about in being a good leader, is being emotionally intelligent, which we've heard about a lot today, and kind of knowing what role you can help to advance your team, help advance the mission.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alison,
God,
what's your
that is
take
just
on
so
leadership?
good. That is exactly what else could I add? Yeah, no, I'll just build on what Anne said, because that's the perfect definition. You really feel it in your own leadership. I do. I'll just speak from my experience. Some of the ways in which you are leading by example or so on, you're not necessarily aware of it until it comes back to you. So I have people, have said recently, thank you for breastfeeding on camera, or for, and doing those things, because I have children, and it's so meaningful. For people to see a mother being like, well, this is what it is. This is what it is. And I have to get on this call. So, I will keep it from the neck above, but you can hear the breast pump, or you can hear the baby in the background. It's things like that. It's like leading from example. And, Ben Horowitz has this interesting, kind of talks about the wartime leader and a peacetime leader, and that's exactly what you're speaking of, the dynamism. In peacetime, you can be planful and, structure things perfectly, and we can all get together and have strategy sessions. In wartime, as in when things are not going so well, the style of leadership really shifts, and now you have to lead from the front, and now you have to sort of say, guys, we have this, steady the ship, set the direction, set the course, and let people see that, you have it in hand. And it's just been such an interesting journey, because it shifts constantly.
Okay. One of the things that struck me about the conversations we had in advance is that you both mentioned the same thing. And I know from last year that mission and mission control, and where do you actually work?
I am out of the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, home of mission control.
Okay. So at Houston, do you have a problem, or?
With HR, if they're listening to us, we never have a problem.
That's fantastic. Okay. And maybe if you're listening to them, they don't have a problem.
True, both.
So the one thing I know is that the whole idea of mission is very, very central to NASA in every way. And a lot of organizations have got mission statements and so on, and they're just fridge magnets, because they really don't have an awful lot of meaning. But I get the sense that it really does mean something at NASA. How do you take something that is really trying to define what you do and how you do it, and bring it to life on a daily basis?
I think this is really important as an HR practitioner. We keep mission and understanding the mission of the customers we are serving, right, NASA employees, at the forefront. I know the mission. We start every meeting that we have with a mission summary of what's coming up, what's going on, who's in space, right? Who's coming home, who's launching, whatever that may be. And it's really, to me, important as an HR practitioner to know the business. And I think that helps go a long way in understanding some of the challenges that you're trying to offer advice and counsel in solving, and it goes a long way in being seen as someone who's trustworthy and is coming to the table with solutions.
Okay. And you know the apocryphal story about the janitor and JFK and putting a man on the moon. It does seem like that does percolate, and there's a reality to that story within NASA. Is that true?
Yes. And if we look, right, NASA, some of NASA's most public moments, you brought up Apollo 13. We've had multiple human spaceflight accidents, information was there along the way, right? That could have potentially prevented or stopped those from happening. And it's how do you make sure that you build that culture of information goes where it needs to go, and that as leaders, you're building the culture that they're willing to hear it and listen to it and take action.
Okay. One of the things that struck me, Alison, when we talked in advance was about the whole idea of how do you keep yourself on track? Because as an entrepreneur, you have as many bad days as good days. There's more uncertainty than there is certainty. And there must be an awful lot of doubt that goes alongside that. And you talked about mission being something that you go back to. Do you want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard. And entrepreneur, having a startup is really, really hard. Even if things are going well, it's really, really challenging. And so, I think how you keep yourself on track, it is all about mission. It is actually about mission. And we've had the experience, and most startups have, of having like many pivots along the way, or having to shift your go-to-market. And if you're not shifting like that, you're probably not moving fast enough, or you're just tremendously lucky. But your mission never changes. And if you can keep the mission front and center, it is the thing that navigates you through difficult situations, but it also is the thing that allows you to break through. So as you were speaking, I was thinking, the position we're in healthcare, we're creating something that is a new category, hasn't existed before. And so things like some of the regulations that we have to attend to were not built for us. They were built for medical devices, for a heart valve that goes inside somebody's body, and so on. And so it doesn't really pertain to software. It doesn't pertain to AI. And while we distribute in the US healthcare system, there's some things there that maybe are more designed to help people avoid a lawsuit than it is in the best interest of the patient. And so if you want to lead, you have to at some point make the call, well, if this is about better outcomes for humans, then we're going to do the difficult thing that on the face of it might look like we're non-compliant, but actually we feel it's defensible because it is aligned with that mission, right? And so it helps you with the hard choices as well.
Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned there about being fixed on the mission and keeping it front of mind all the time helps you to break through. Where did you break through because you've focused on the mission and that enabled you to get to it? So the adversity actually becomes something that informs something that brings you to a better place.
Totally. Adversity, like the pain of it, like no pain, no gain, whatever those cliches are, it's kind of true. It shouldn't be easy. If it were easy, then everybody would be doing it. But you're doing hard things, and it will be hard. And so, you can sort of lean into that, or you can really fight against it. And actually, it's just a lot easier to lean in, isn't it?
Good. And the other part of your role, the precursor to your present role, was you were head of HR for astronaut selection.
Yes.
And you mentioned one of the characteristics earlier of a leader is being adaptive and being able to lead and follow at the same time. So what I'm curious about, and you said that it percolates through every role in the organization. Obviously, there are do-or-die decisions that happen in space that astronauts need to be primed for. What were the leadership qualities that you filtered for when you were deciding who's the best to go into the shuttle to go to space?
Well, and I think we've hit upon some of them, right? We've heard about the importance of communication, the importance of listening. An astronaut, right, if we think about the space station, they can, in most circumstances, right, they have to be able to follow the directions from mission control. When they can't follow the directions from mission control, we need them to be comfortable analyzing the situation, using whatever data they have to make a decision that, again, could be a life or death circumstance. So I do think both leadership and followership for us is really critical, just given the line of work. And the other thing I'd add to that is humility, right? The astronaut panel interviews prospective astronauts, and probably the foremost question on their mind is, would I want to be locked in a tin can with you for 6 months on the short end, and if we're heading to Mars, could be a really long time in a tin can with people. So I think that humility, being able to modulate your personality a little bit has also been really important to our selection decisions.
Thank you. Alison, I know that overlaps with some of your sentiment around leadership and so on. And one of the things, we have this idea of an entrepreneur, even a tech entrepreneur, as being brash and bold and bolshy. But actually, you're far from that. So what about what Anna said resonates with you in your circumstances and in your situation?
I mean, I do feel like when I was thinking about leadership, and there's this combination of both confidence and humility for sure, and keeping an open mind and being okay with not having all of the answers. And I was fortunate enough to bring in a CEO in 2020, and it's just been wonderful to see him, the way he operates, in that he does not need to be the smartest person in the room or have any answers. He somehow manages to get everybody else to do the best work of their life, and it's just without asking, it's just this incredible, it's a really great thing to behold. And also I think the act of bringing Michael in as well was the best thing I ever did, and I just don't understand why more founders don't kind of bring in like real heavy hitter leadership to be alongside them in partnership, because it's a great thing for the company. And that's, I guess you could say that was a humble move too.
Well, maybe those founders wouldn't have been selected to go in the shuttle and the tin can to space for 6 months because of the lack of humility. I have 2 final questions before we finish. The second last question is, you talked about it being a journey, Alison, and you're still on one, right? When we're all on a journey of one kind or another. What is it that you've discovered about leadership now, that you realize about leadership now, that you wouldn't have done in your earlier career? So you're 24 years with NASA now, you're 7 years on the journey with this. What's the one thing, if you were to crystallize it and said, that's the thing about leadership that I now understand through the process of going through the journey that I wouldn't have understood way back in the day?
That's a good question.
I'm glad you're first.
I know. Sweating. Anne, any ideas? Well, it is that piece that things are going to change, and that you have to just continuously, keep an open mind and adapt and evolve. But the other piece, I do think personally, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in the early days, and it was a very different transition coming from academia, where you're in your office with the door closed, writing papers, analyzing data all day. I loved it. I mean, it was brilliant. And then going out to be suddenly, in the public eye, and you are the founder. And certainly in Silicon Valley, certainly at the time, there's this cult of the founder, which is completely inappropriate because you're only as good as your team. But I found that very intense. And so, again, tuning into the sort of realizing, look, this is not about me. This is about the opportunity that I've been given to fulfill this mission, which is really important because, frankly, our mental health care is in a bit of difficulty right now. I would have just said, listen, chill out. It's cool. Like, just remember why you're here and what you're doing. It's not really about you. Kind of get over yourself. That's really
get over yourself and stay calm under pressure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anne, what would you say?
I think that was brilliant.
Thank you.
And it speaks to a little bit about what we were talking about with maybe the first question. I think at various points in our lives, we all think we know what leadership is, right? And, yes, that's what it is. It's a little bit like right before you have kids, you go in and you think, oh, I'm never going to do this, or I'm definitely doing this. And then you have kids and you're like, oh my gosh, that was completely stupid of me to even think that I could fathom what this whole experience is like. So I think from a leadership perspective, again, it's right, continually adapting your definition and moving it along and not being stuck in one way, in one type of leadership, or that you're always going to lead the same type of people, et cetera. So to me, it's been constantly morphing as I've learned more and grown more and been more confident and open and appreciative that everyone brings something to the table, and you don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
I would love to continue on with the questioning because I think we're only scratching the surface, but we've run out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much. The one word I've learned today that I'm taking away is intersectionality. And I want to say thanks for the intersectionality of both of these power ladies for the last half an hour. Thank you very much.